In just 72 hours, the United States didn't just disrupt global trade. It sent shocks of the international economy, tearing open alliances, collapsing deals, and triggering a silent but strategic realignment of global power. What began with a single tariff order has escalated into something far greater. Not a trade dispute, a global recalibration. Canada turned away, Europe retaliated, and in the quiet vacuum that followed, a new player entered the not with headlines, but with precision. This isn't a story of diplomacy gone wrong. It's the story of a global system being re-engineered in real time, in ports, boardrooms, and government corridors, and of a superpower learning that leverage, when overplayed, becomes isolation. Let's rewind. May 30th. Washington, a press conference. The President of the United States steps up to the podium and delivers what sounds like a routine update.
Talks with the European Union are stalled.
But then, in a single breath, decades of economic diplomacy. A sweeping 50% tariff is declared on all EU imports: cars, steel, electronics, even food. Within minutes, the economic world starts recalculating. Within hours, the political world starts realigning. Canada is next. 35% tariffs announced, with only narrow exceptions. Mexico gets hit with the same. America's closest allies, treated like adversaries. The markets don't just react, they recoil. European stocks plunge. Boeing, one of America's most iconic manufacturers, a $43 billion deal with Ryanair freeze overnight. Its stock stumbles. Recession alarms begin to echo across Wall Street. But this isn't just about a company, this is about credibility, and something even more valuable: trust. Across the Atlantic, European leaders meet behind closed doors. But instead of matching America's tariffs blow for blow, Brussels moves with precision. It's not rage, it's strategy. The European Union drafts a $95 billion retaliation package, but it's not random. It's targeted, surgically aimed at politically sensitive American exports: peanut butter from Pennsylvania, motorcycles from Wisconsin, products tied directly to swing states and voter blocs. This isn't just about economics anymore, it's psychological, it's personal, and it's strategic warfare in the language of trade. But while that story makes headlines, something far more permanent is unfolding behind the scenes. Allies aren't just retaliating, they're rerouting. Across the EU, supply chain executives and procurement officers begin shifting gears. Contracts with American suppliers are paused, shipping routes are redirected, new partners are vetted, ones that don't make policy via press conference. In Brussels, a quiet consensus is forming: if the United States wants to weaponize its market access, then Europe will future-proof itself against it. And so begins a quiet decoupling. Let's go back to Boeing. The freezing of the Ryanair deal isn't just a blow to American aviation, it's a signal. The $30 billion order was supposed to span a decade. Now, it's in limbo. And in the vacuum left by that uncertainty, something unthinkable emerges. China's COMAC, once seen as a fringe manufacturer, suddenly enters the conversation. For decades, global aviation has followed a simple rule: Western airlines fly Western planes, Boeing, Airbus, FAA standards. But that rule is cracking. And the crack began with one canceled contract. The COMAC C919 is no longer a prototype, it's in production. And more importantly, it's available. With Boeing destabilized and Airbus overbooked, Ryanair begins evaluating COMAC seriously. Not as a bargaining chip, but as a viable alternative. And if it happens, if Ryanair places an order, it won't just shake the market. It will fracture the FAA's global dominance. For decades, the FAA didn't just certify aircraft, it set the standard for aviation safety worldwide. Training programs, licensing protocols, manufacturing audits, all built on American regulations. But now, European regulators are preparing to certify Chinese jets. And that shift isn't just about planes, it's about who writes the rules for global infrastructure. While all eyes are on the skies, another shift is happening on the ground, in Canada. While the US was building, Canada was quietly building bridges. The Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, known as CETA, had already eliminated most tariffs between the EU and Canada. Now, that framework becomes a lifeline. European companies begin rerouting logistics through Canadian ports. Manufacturers shift final assembly lines to Quebec and Ontario. Supply chains that once flowed through the US now bypass it entirely. Why? Because Canada offers something increasingly rare in North America: stability. No erratic policy shifts, no midnight tweets, no tariff roulette. Just consistent standards, predictable regulations, and alignment with European norms. And the results are immediate. Clean tech exports from Canada to Europe jump 41% year over year. A 1.2 billion euros hydrogen supply deal is signed. Joint projects in AI energy grids, solar infrastructure, and rare earth mining are launched. The message? Canada isn't just a neighbor anymore, it's a replacement. And it's not just Europe. Across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, a new trade web is being quietly spun, with the European Union at the center. Since 2023, Brussels has launched 17 new bilateral negotiations. But these deals aren't just about cutting tariffs. They're about redesigning the very architecture of global trade. Each agreement includes digital data protections, environmental commitments, labor frameworks, and infrastructure investment. They're not just trade agreements. They're governance blueprints, with Europe writing the rules. And the US? Not even in the room. In 2024, the EU finalizes a $3.4 billion supply chain pact with India. It bypasses the dollar system entirely. It excludes the US completely, and more importantly, it signals to the world, you no longer need Washington to access global markets. The result? A silent but accelerating bypass. Washington expected retaliation. What it got was irrelevance. Back in the US, the tariffs were sold as economic protection, but the data tells a different story. Harley-Davidson sees its EU sales plunge by 30%, $145 million in projected losses by Q3 of 2025. American farmers report a $23 billion drop in exports to Europe. Wisconsin-based dairy producers are hit hard. Butter and cheese shipments stall, soy and corn are rerouted, delayed, or rejected, but it doesn't end abroad. At home, the tariffs are squeezing from the other side. Domestic prices for aluminum, steel, and auto parts surge. Manufacturers face rising costs, delays, and compliance chaos. And now some are considering moving operations to, ironically, Canada or Europe. Washington thought it was building leverage. Instead, it's built a cage. But perhaps the most profound shift is not in the numbers, but in the psychology. For decades, the world accepted that US leadership was the price of access. To trade globally, you followed Washington's lead, but now, trust in the US is seen as a risk factor. Companies are writing Washington risk into their contracts. Governments are diversifying partnerships. Investors are moving capital into jurisdictions with fewer surprises. Because the world has learned something. You don't need to shut the US out. You just need to build around it. And that's exactly what's happening. Digital infrastructure corridors are being mapped without US participation. Environmental standards are being set by Brussels, not Washington. Supply chains are rerouting through Mumbai, Jakarta, Sao Paulo. This isn't ideological, it's practical. Because what global commerce values more than anything is predictability. And unpredictability has become America's export. The transatlantic alliance that once anchored global trade is no longer a requirement. It's becoming an option, and many are opting out. Here's the quiet truth. No one declared the end of American leadership. It simply stopped showing up. While Europe signs deal after deal, standard after standard, the US is absent. Not because it was pushed out, but because it stood still. And while Washington debates tariffs and leverage, the rest of the world is designing frameworks that will last 20 years. No flags have fallen. No alliances have broken, but the shift is underway, and the longer the US waits, the more permanent it becomes. Once alternative systems are built, in finance, trade, logistics, and regulation, there is no going back, there's only forward. So who writes the rules of the next global economy? That answer is no longer a matter of speculation, it's unfolding, deal by deal, summit by summit, contract by contract. And if America wants to lead again, it won't be enough to raise its voice. It will have to earn back the world's trust, not with pressure, but with predictability, not with dominance, but with design. Because in this new global order, trust is the currency, and volatility is the cost.